And you are tuning into Health Tips with the Nation's Bedside Doctor on Clark TV Network, where we believe in the future. Thank you so much for coming back. If you've been following me and watching me, on especially 108 Praise Radio. As you know, I've now switched over to the TV side so that I can reach even more of you. And if you are just finding me for the first time, welcome, and I hope that you stick with me. You will learn some great medical tools and be able to, be in the know about the latest and greatest in medical news, as well as medical topics that I feel do not get the recognition that they need to. I call them the unsung heroes. So you could have been anywhere else on a Thursday at 6 p.m. You could have been stuck in traffic. You could have been making dinner. You could be unwinding, trying to get your mind right to finish out this week. Whatever. You could have been anywhere else, but you're here with me today. So thank you. And, I with this show is very different from my radio show. I am going to do some little things different. One of them is to give you what we call a 5-minute consult. So I'm going to talk about some latest and greatest in the medical world that I actually read up on last night. I am constantly looking for different sources and learning different things myself. I always say I'm a lifelong learner, so I want you to learn right along with me. So the first thing that I want to go into is there was an observational study that was done recently and published in Stroke, which is the journal for the American Heart Association. And what they found is that in postmenopausal women ages 50 to 79 years of age, that drinking multiple diet drinks was associated with an increased risk of having a stroke caused by a blocked artery, especially little smaller arteries. Now, what the researchers did was they analyzed 81,714 postmenopausal women as a part of the Women's Health Initiative study, and they tracked these health outcomes over an average of 11.9 years, starting from when the women enrolled in 1993, and then the study ran for 5 years until 1998. At that 3-year evaluation mark, the women reported how often in the previous 3 months they had consumed diet drinks, such as low-calorie artificial sweetened colas, sodas, and fruit drinks. The results that were obtained had to be adjusted for various risk factors such as age, high blood pressure, and smoking. So when they did that, they readjusted. They found that women who consumed were more likely, 23% more likely to have a stroke, 31% likely to have a clot-caused stroke. So we call those ischemic strokes. 29% more likely to develop heart disease, which can include fatal and non-fatal heart attacks. 16 more percent likely to die from any cause. So this is when they compared this to women who drink less than one of the diet drinks per week. Now, what they also found was that women were also likely to, without heart disease or diabetes, 2.44 times more likely to have the blockage in one of the very small arteries in the brain. So that can also lead to having strokes. That's what the definition of a stroke actually is. But most people think that it has to do with the larger of the arteries. It's actually the smaller of the arteries that this study has pinpointed. Obese women who do not have a previous history of heart disease and diabetes were 2 times more likely to have a clot caused stroke. And in African American women, that goes up to almost 4 times more likely to have a clot caused stroke. So this is very serious. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to drink diet that's actually healthy. Well, in this study, it's telling us, hey, there may be some risks that are involved with this. Now, I will caution you because the study does have some limitations. One of the limitations is that it was an observational study. So in the medical field, we use as a gold standard a randomized, double-blinded study. So this study was not that. This study was actually based on self-reported information about diet, drink consumption. So it was kind of like at the mercy of the person whether or not they wanted to be truthful with how many drinks they were actually drinking. The second thing is that this was performed on postmenopausal women. So we know being postmenopausal puts you at an increased risk for a number of illnesses that can happen as a result of the hormones dropping. So this may or may not translate to a younger woman or to even men for that matter. And then, thirdly, it does not actually flush out which of the artificial sweeteners is harmful or harmless. So it almost, kind of lumped them all together, and some of them may, in fact, be harmless. So, I think that while the study was a good one, it's a start, and it does warrant further investigation on our part as the medical field. Now, I always preach everything in moderation. So you shouldn't drink too much of anything other than water. And even with water, if you drink too much, you could have some issues with swelling on the brain. But for the most part, if you're drinking the normal allotted 8 ounce of water throughout the day, then you should be okay. I think that for somebody that wants to bridge the gap, like they're not wanting to go completely cold turkey off of drinking sugary things, so they drop down to the diet drinks. That's fine in the interim until you get solely to water. Now, one of the complaints that I always hear from patients, I hate how water tastes. Okay, I get it. Tap water, depending upon how it's filtered, may not be the best. But what I always recommend is boiling the tap water. Boiling takes out the impurities, and I remember growing up, my aunt and grandmother used to always boil the water, and when we would drink that water was ice cold, and it would come out of the refrigerator, and it's probably because all the impurities have been taken out. So try that. You can also, maybe try to put a little bit of, they use different kinds of sweeteners like the little lemonade packets or whatever. You can try that in a room until you feel more comfortable in drinking straight water. But to me, water is always best. It is actually what the American Heart Association also recommends, is drinking water as the best choice for a no-calorie drink. So if that's what you want to do, water is the way to go. Another article that I came across, and this is going to be controversial, and I am actually going to preface this by saying that these are my views. These are not the views of Clark TV Network, nor my guests here today. But as an OBGYN, I would be remiss to not mention this bill, and especially because it happened in my home state of Ohio. So yesterday, my home state legislators decided that they wanted to reintroduce the heartbeat abortion bill. Now, for what that means, if you don't already know it, we consider viability of a fetus to be at 23 and 5/7 weeks, 24 weeks. And so what these legislators are trying to do is to say once that fetus has a heartbeat, that there can be no abortions. Now, we know that 50% of babies will survive outside of the womb if they make it to that viability mark. But at this heartbeat bill, outside the body, they're not going to live. Now, former Governor John Kasich actually vetoed this bill back in December before he came out of office, and rightfully so, because this is so restrictive and it tramples all over Roe v. Wade. Now that there's a new governor, Mike DeWine, the bill has been reintroduced, and he said that he is going to sign it. And I guess at that point we'll let the Supreme Court decide, because of course there is going to be a battle, and they're hoping that with the new makeup of the Supreme Court is going to be in their favor, and Roe v. Wade will be overturned. And I'm very much against this bill. I have seen the effects when people have abortions done by not trained people. Women die. Women get infections. Sometimes they can no longer have children after it if it's done improperly. And so there is a place for having abortions done in a safe location and by a trained medical physician. Now, also, abortion, to me, is a very personal choice. We don't know what's going on in that woman's life. And so for us to say, oh, we want this baby out, well, that's irresponsible on our part, because we're not taking care of that baby for her. She's going to be with this baby. And so we have to think about her needs as well. And so I think that the government should stay out of the woman's womb, and that this is a decision between the woman and her physician. Sometimes we have to use abortions to save a woman's life in the event that a pregnancy is too risky for her and that she may die as a result. Sometimes the fetus will have genetic issues that are not compatible with life, meaning that once they are born, they're not going to survive. And some women do not want that emotional attachment at that time. So this, once again, is a choice between that woman and her physician and any family that she decides she wants involved with this situation. So, I'm going to say to the government, stay out of our uteruses, and maybe you need to concentrate on how not to have another government shutdown. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, I'm going to actually redo the CPR demonstration that myself and Dr. Toka were doing on my last show last week. We had some technical difficulties, and so he, being Jolly Green Giant, part of him was cut off, and then also you could not actually see the mannequin that I had. So I'm going to try to redo this, and we'll be right back.
You should totally talk to him. No, I don't know though. I'm scared. I mean, it's scared, but you're so... Life is passing by so fast. Say
goodbye. Do you know that you're in my lane? No, not at all. Are you not paying attention? Are you texting? I was just checking in with my mom. I was telling her that I thought we'd be home by 6. It's okay. There's enough time. Just pay attention. I'm not even halfway through my text. There's no way. I'm not even going to look up. My babies are in the car. You have to pay attention. It's just supposed to be a quick text. I'm so sorry.
Did the CPR and saved her life.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And so it does We are back, and like I said before we went to break, I'm going to redo the CPR demonstration. Last week, I told you that I couldn't find a actual CPR mannequin, so I had to get a Baby Alive. But Baby Alive is going to help me with this demonstration. So just imagine this as adult mannequin. So one of the things that you want to make sure that you're doing with CPR is that you've got to have a vantage point, a great vantage point to be able to do your chest compressions, because chest compressions are key to be able to circulate the blood and the oxygen to the organs. Once somebody has a cardiac arrest, most of the organs will shut down so that the brain is spared. And so we only have about 8 minutes from the time somebody really goes down to the time somebody is officially brain dead and possibly deceased at that point. So you got to get moving very quickly with your CPR. I told you that CPR demonstration is not a substitute for CPR training. And I am going to encourage each of you to get CPR training. Just because you're not in the medical field doesn't mean that you can't get trained. As Dr. Toka had said, he had a patient who saved his wife's life because he had just done CPR training, and he noticed that his wife was not breathing in the middle of the night. So had he not done that training, his wife will probably not be with us today. So I strongly encourage you. I know it may cost money, but it is well worth the money spent. I'm going to introduce both Samantha and Nancy in a few minutes, but Samantha was just telling me at break that she just actually took the CPR course. I may actually have her to help me here, okay? Okay. So here's what we're going to do. CPR is broken down into what we call untrained versus trained people. And so depending upon whether or not you're untrained or trained will depend on how many compressions that you do. Remember, I told you that compressions are the most important thing. So for somebody that's untrained, meaning that you're maybe just learning how to do CPR from this demonstration, and you're by yourself, you're going to do 100 chest compressions. So what you're going to do, you've got to clasp your hands. Make sure that your arms are locked. You don't want your arms bent, okay? And make sure that the person is down on a flat surface. So if the person is in the bed, you cannot do CPR effectively in the bed. They've got to be on a hard surface. This table is simulating our hard surface. It's hard in and of itself anyway. But just imagine me being on the floor doing this. So I'm going to lock my arms, and I'm going to go 2 sternal breaths down. Lock. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you're going to do this 100 times. You're going to do it really, really rapidly, okay? And the key when you're by yourself is to start CPR first before you call 911, okay? That is key because, once again, you've got to get that blood circulating, and you've only got a short period of time to be able to do that, okay? When you're untrained and by yourself, you do not have to try to give the person breaths. You just need to do your chest compressions 100 times, okay? And then you can call 911, and then you come back and you do it again. Now, if you've got 2 people or you're trained medically like I am, you can now do what we call the 30-2 rule, meaning that you do 30 chest compressions. Okay, so imagine I've gotten 29, 30. I can breathe. And you're going to watch the chest rise. Now, in Baby Alive, because it's not a real CPR mannequin, you're not going to see the chest rising. But that's how you know that your breath is coming into the lungs, is when the chest starts to rise. So you're going to watch for that. You're going to give 2 breaths, and then you go back to it. Okay? Now, if you got a second person with you, that second person can also help, because it gets tiring doing your chest compressions if you are doing it properly. And also, if you're doing it properly, you do run the risk of breaking someone's ribs. But as I said, I would rather break somebody's rib and you be alive than to not break your rib and now you're 6 feet under. So don't worry about breaking somebody's rib, okay? They'll be okay with you doing that, I'm sure. Now, if after you do your 3 cycles of the 30 to 2, you can hopefully 911 has been called by that point, because you can send that second person while you're doing your chest compressions to go call 911 at this point. So make sure that you get 911 there. Make sure that that you don't panic. You have to be calm about this, because at this point in time, this person is relying on you. So that's my little demonstration. Make sure that you attend some of the CPR training courses. I know that the American Red Cross has a lot of training courses around the country, and some other places may also, but I know them for sure. So if you go to their website and just type in CPR training, you will be able to find some of those training sessions, but make sure that you do it. A person's life depends on it. When we come back, I'm going to get a chance to talk to these 2 beautiful ladies next to me, Miss Nancy Froh and Miss Samantha Macedo. And they are both from Partnership Against Domestic Violence. So we're going to be talking about teen dating violence when we get back.
There. Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding. Why did the girl ask the mushroom to dance? Because he was a fun guy. What do you call a pig that knows karate? Pork chop. Why was the basketball court all wet? Why? Because the players kept dribbling all over it. Can I tell you another one? So how does a tissue dance? Put a little boogie on it. What's Beethoven's favorite fruit? Banana. What is a boxer's favorite drink? Fruit punch.
We are back. February's got a lot going on. We got Black History Month, we got Valentine's Day, we got American Heart Month, and this is also the month for teen dating violence. We don't really talk about teen dating violence when we're talking about domestic violence, but we really and truly need to, and that's why I have these 2 ladies with me today. Miss Nancy Froh, who is on my left and should be on your right, is the CEO for Partnership Against Domestic Violence, and Samantha Macedo is the Vice President of Prevention and Outreach with Partnership Against Domestic Violence. Thank you so much for coming on to the show and bringing more awareness about this topic. Now, Nancy, if you followed me on 108 Praise Radio, was actually on my show where I discussed domestic violence. But as I said, we did not talk about teen dating violence, and we know that it exists. Why is it that teen dating violence, you think, is not talked about as much?
Well, studies show that 1 in 3 teens will be the victim of some kind of dating violence or abuse in a relationship, but 82% of parents think it won't happen to their child or their children's friends. So I think there's obviously a big gap in the reality of what our youth are experiencing and what we as adults think and understand that they're experiencing. So that's why it's so important that shows like yours are on, so that we can educate adults and say, talk to your teens, ask them about what's going on, ask them about what they're experiencing, so that they know that you're a resource for them if something happens.
Absolutely. So you mentioned 1 in 3. Now, is that broken down into girls versus boys, or is that all?
The
Genders.
1 in 3 is overall. Sam, you may know more the gender breakdown of the numbers.
Yeah, it's all together. There is, and it's on any type of abuse. So whether it's physical, emotional, verbal abuse. So 1 in 3 teenagers have experienced it. Now, when it comes to high school students who have been in a relationship, 1 in 9 teenage girls and 1 in 13 teenage boys have experienced some physical dating violence, physical abuse in the last year. So that is the breakdown of gender experiences.
Now, we normally when we talk about domestic violence, we talk about physical. The other types of violence that can occur are what?
So we are talking about verbal abuse and emotional abuse, which often goes hand in hand. We're talking about abuse through technology, so someone who is being constantly monitored by their partner through phones or social media, who is being harassed. For example, they have befriended all of their social media friends so that they can keep track of where they're going, their partner is going, who they're hanging out with. Also asking for passwords to these accounts so that they don't have any privacy from their partner on these platforms. I've even heard of young people who said, my girlfriend got mad at me and deleted my Instagram account.
Wow.
And so that's it's serious. When you come to, I think adults sometimes we are distanced from, like, it's your Instagram account. But for a young person, it is part of their identity and their experiences as a young person to have those kind of platforms. We're also talking about sexual abuse, sexual assault, rape, but also pregnancy coercion. Would you have a kid? Would you have a child? If you love me, right, you will give me a child. And pregnancy coercion and birth control sabotage. So whether it's punching a hole through a condom, or
Not wearing a condom.
right? Asking not to wear a condom and or forcing not to wear a condom, and messing with the birth control pills, that can also be part of birth control sabotage. Let's see. So the way that we define abuse, it's about the pattern of controlling behavior. So when you look at what's going on under that lens, under that description, you can see that there's many different ways in which abuse can show up in a person's life, especially a young person's life.
Now, why is teen dating violence occurring?
Well, I think teen dating violence is occurring for the same reason that domestic violence occurs and intimate partner violence. It's using abusive behaviors to have power and control over another person, to basically say, you belong to me, you're mine, and you need to act the way that I tell you to act, and if you don't, then there will be consequences for that. And also that behavior, the person is afraid of that behavior, the person is afraid of the negativity that will come, so to avoid that person then behaves how that other person wants them to behave. So let's say as a girl, I'm the abuser and I'm very jealous, and I'm telling my boyfriend, you don't talk to anybody else, you don't see anyone else, and so I'm constantly monitoring his telephone, and I'm putting him down in front of my friends. Well, he thinks he's such a hot stud and could go out with other people, but I'm the only one that would ever want him. So using ridicule, verbal abuse, there can be a lot of shaming that happens on social media, putting the person down, making fun of them. Another thing that happens in sexual abuse is your partner asking you to send pictures perhaps of you naked or revealing pictures, and then publicly posting them to shame you.
Yeah, I've actually seen some Lifetime movies that have actually portrayed just that, where they thought that they were taking pictures in private, whether or not they consented to that or not, and then all of a sudden now their pictures are out and they're being blackmailed for those pictures. So it does happen actually more often than not. It's just not a Lifetime movie. It actually happens in real life as well.
So if you love me, you would send me a picture of yourself naked, say you send, and then, okay, you're going to have sex with me tonight and every night this week, because if you don't, I'm posting your picture all over Facebook.
Now, we discussed boys being victims as well, because a lot of times when we talk about violence and especially physical violence, we're thinking, oh, a woman can never abuse a man, or a girl can never abuse a boy, but that's just not true.
No, that's absolutely not true, and that is why it's really important to talk about the fact that boys can be victims as well, because we think of it as happening to girls. So if it happens to a girl and she reaches out, that's the norm, and we're more likely to be receptive. But if a boy is experiencing that abuse, well, he's supposed to be a man, and he's supposed to be tough, and he doesn't let that kind of thing happen to him. So that makes it even more difficult for him to reach out and to ask for help and to say, hey, this is going on with me, and I need somebody to help me with it. There's so much shame and fear and embarrassment that young man can face in telling and asking for help, that it can make it very, very difficult.
Absolutely. Now, with teens, we are dealing with all sorts of hormonal changes and things going on in the home life. When we're looking at teen dating violence, how does that play a role, if it plays?
Well, I think we talk about some of the signs of teen dating violence, and we talk about kids being more emotional, being more anxious, being more depressed, maybe using substances more, withdrawing, not being as connected to family and friends as they've been before. It can be physical bruising. It can be wearing winter clothing in the summer to cover bruising. But a lot of the things that we talk about that can be symptoms are part of being a teenager as well. And so I think that's one thing that can be difficult for parents if they're seeing some of these things. Well, is that, kids are kids and they're just acting, the hormones are going crazy and all that kind of thing, or is there something else going on? And so what we always say is, ask. There's no harm in asking. You might ask, and your teen might say, Mom, you're crazy, everything's fine, schoolwork is driving me crazy, and I just don't want to talk to anybody. Okay, great. But again, you've opened that door and let your teen know.
The door has to be open.
Right. I care about you. I want you to be safe. If you need to, you can come talk to me.
One of the things that we talk to, that we talk about in our education in the community is that when you get to that teen age, you are going through some changes, and it's already a difficult age, and so you want to establish good communication with young people before they get to that age.
Exactly.
If you try at that point, it's going to be
They're like,
harder.
whatever. I'm not trying to hear nothing that you have to say.
Exactly.
I know what is best for me, type thing.
Right. So you want to.
We all were teenagers. We know.
Right. We have to remember we were there once,
Yeah.
and so we probably were not very receptive. So we want to establish some good communication with young people before they get to that age. And I'm going to jump on the prevention work that we do because at that age, peer influence is very important in their lives, and so that's part of why we have created a team board. And so we have a group of young high school students who both young men and young women who are leaders in the community. They have received some training from us as far as how to do a presentation or how to present this topic, how to talk and advocate about this topic. And then they are peer leaders themselves in their communities. They bring these messages and they have events in their school, whether it's on Valentine's Day in the cafeteria. If you want to buy a flower, let's also write a message of healthy love or healthy relationships, right? And so they have come up with a ton of ideas on how to continue taking these messages about healthy relationships in their own schools.
Nice. Yeah, I actually found on a website. It's a really good website, actually, that I found this on. It's called loveisrespect.org.
Right.
And so through the Domestic Violence Awareness Project, they actually have 13 ways any high school student can make ending domestic violence his or her business.
That's great.
So, on here, a lot of what you mentioned is here. And so kids can be
Absolutely.
advocates. They're the best advocates because they are actually probably seeing these people on a daily basis, and they're maybe even more aware than the parents may be with it. So you can get involved and not feel like you're a snitch, okay? Even if you don't want to personally get involved, you can tell a teacher, You can tell your principal.
Yeah.
You can tell a resource officer. There's so many different people that you interact with in schools that you can bring this to their attention, and as the adults, then they can bring it to that person's parents.
Yeah,
And, and it's so important for teens with their friends to say this isn't okay. I was listening to another radio show that was happening on teen dating violence, and this young woman called in and she said, you know, I haven't been the popular one, and I've struggled with my weight, and the head of the football team started dating me, and I just thought I was in heaven, and it was so great. Then he started shoving me, then he started hitting me, and I went to my friends, and I said, you know, I love him, but what should I do? And they're like, girl, you're so lucky to have him. You just need to stay with him. That, you know what, that happens. Just put up with it, because look at how much better, and you're going to the fun parties now because you're with him. So you know what, just deal with it. And so to then, basically, we're saying it's all
It's
right for you to
okay.
be hit. It's all
Yeah.
right for you to be hurt. So for instead, as a friend, to say, hey, you deserve to be safe, and someone that cares about you is not going to treat you that way. And you know what? It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. So let's talk about how you get safe now.
Absolutely.
That's hugely impactful.
Let's talk about some of the warning signs, because we have actually touched on some of them, but I want, here are all of your warning signs. And, you know, this may or may not be a complete list, because obviously every person is an individual.
Right.
And so your abuser may or may not be putting these signs out. But for the most part,
Yeah.
what are they?
And so I think, so when we talk to young people, the first thing that I like to do is just define what is a warning sign. And then a warning sign is that alarm that's going off in your head, that gut feeling that is telling you something is off. And sometimes we don't speak out and say, you know, hey, I don't like it when you tell me those things, or when you treat me that way, or when you do these things. And in a healthy relationship, you are able to have those conversations, and you should be able to compromise and have those conversations without fear that the other party is going to break up with you or blow up. And so that's one of the main things. So warning signs, as far as, you know, again, when you look at the definition of what is an abusive relationship, a controlling, power and control situation, then a warning sign can be, you know, they don't respect your boundaries. A warning sign can be they call you names. They don't like it when you hang out with other people. They start isolating you. They keep tabs on you. You constantly have to check in. You know, say, I got home, went to my party, and who's there? And having to prove to that person that you really are telling the truth, that you are where you are, that you are who the people that you say that you are. We've heard from young people who say, oh, show me with FaceTime, show me who's there, and put the camera around to really make sure. So that again, that super controlling, possessive, I think hyper jealousy is another one that we tend to associate. Yeah, I think in young people's minds, jealousy is seen as, you know,
Oh, they care.
He really loves me.
love me.
I'm so important
Yeah.
to him. He don't want me talking to anybody else.
Yeah.
That's how much he
Exactly.
loves me.
That's how much, and it's just when it's hyper jealousy is something that is just doesn't make sense. For example, we've heard people who say, my partner, my abuser was jealous of the dog, the pet. You know, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, the pet's not human. How are you, jealous of a non-human?
Exactly. Or jealous of your best friend, because even if it's someone from the same sex, you seem to spend too much time with your best girlfriend, why is that? So those
Or your family.
Your
Right,
family.
it's anything. It's attention and time taken away from the abuser.
Exactly.
Everything that you are should be mine. Everything that you are should be with me at all times. So if you are showing that you care about other people in your life, then I'm assuming that means you care less about me, and that's unacceptable. And I'm going to work to get that.
To get that back. Nancy, you mentioned about the example where she had some weight gain. And I know that when appearances change, including weight fluctuations, you're either losing too much weight, you're gaining too much weight. That could be a sign of depression, which can then turn into a sign for abuse. Because most of the time, people who are abused are depressed. They're not feeling up. They're not feeling like their normal selves,
Right.
but they try to give the appearance that nothing is wrong. So the changing of the appearance is also grades for kids. You know,
Absolutely.
you start off as an honor student and all of a sudden now you're getting D's and F's. Well, why is that?
Absolutely.
Is something going on in the home life or in your relationships that's causing you to do that? Is your abuser keeping you from doing your homework or keeping you from going to school?
Right.
Do they have you cutting classes?
Right, come
And
and
being
hang
a
out with me.
delinquent.
That's right. Come and
Exactly.
hang out with me. We'll have a
So-
good time. Why do you want to go be sit in that
With your
stupid classroom?
family.
Come on, come hang out with me. Well, why won't you come hang out with me? Is it because you're really flirting with that boy that's sitting at the
Right.
desk next to you?
And this is where the teachers and the principals need to come into play, because when you see a kid that has multiple absences, and especially if they didn't have that before,
Something's
you
going
need to
on.
question what is going on. You need to get their parents involved. Immediately, because the parents may not even know. The parents may be at work, so they're thinking, oh, my kid, went to school and I haven't gotten a call from the school, so everything is fine. But everything may not be fine. So the schools really need to do their part in alerting parents
Absolutely.
of this.
Absolutely.
Now, when we talk about protecting teens from violence, what can be done? Normally we talk about restraining orders when we're talking about adults. How are restraining orders done for teens? Or is it the same?
It's similar. So for a restraining order, family violence law says, here in Georgia says, that it may be different in other states, that you need to either have been living together, been married, or have a child together in order to qualify for a protection order. So when you're talking about young people, high schoolers, middle schoolers, who may not have lived together, may not have a child together, it's dating violence, then they wouldn't necessarily qualify to get a protection order under family law. They will need to go through the route of a restraining order. There are some barriers in getting a protection order as a young person, as a minor. In Georgia, you need to have an adult file it for you. So it doesn't have to be a parent, but it can be a teacher, a counselor, any kind of adult needs to file it on your behalf.
Okay, so they don't necessarily have to be an emancipated minor. They can do this, but they can get an adult that they trust if they don't,
Right.
say, have a relationship with their family.
Yeah, you also need to, in a restraining order, you also need to show that there's unwanted contact. So bring some kind of proof, which can be, a barrier if the young person just doesn't know that they need to keep track of, keep records or screenshots of the harassment.
And if the abuser has their phone, they may not
exactly have access
be
to
able
that.
to take pictures, or if they do, the abuser is deleting those pictures.
exactly.
So that's where, getting someone else involved,
Yeah.
be it, the teacher, be it a parent or an
Yeah.
adult that you trust, be it even a friend.
Yeah. And an additional challenge is what Nancy mentioned about that communication. If this young person just doesn't have a trusted adult that they can go to because they need help, then they may not be able to file the restraining order at all. Now, again, in some other states, it works differently, but in Georgia, that's how it
That's
works.
how it works. Okay, and that's good to know. So you definitely need to check your state laws and statutes just to make sure that you are doing it properly. Because what you don't want to have to do is to backtrack. And then also you want to make sure that things are done right the first time so that the abuser doesn't get off.
It's difficult for teens because they may be often going to school with their abuser, and so even if it's reported to the school, if the school hasn't had a problem on its grounds, they can't kick someone out of school on someone's word. They can't suspend them. Sometimes they'll say to the victim, "Well, you go to another school, then that person can feel that she's being punished because she's being sent
And why
away."
should she be
It's,
punished?
right, from all, go to a different school because then you won't be having to be in the same vicinity, but then you're having to leave all your friends and your support system, and you're looking like the bad one with the ostracized one. So it can be very difficult and very messy.
And I imagine that it's probably even messier for boys because they don't want that stigma
Right.
attached to them saying, "Oh, I can't handle this woman."
exactly.
And so I would suspect that number is a lot lower for boys getting
Yeah.
restraining orders.
Yeah, there's a lot of, we know that there's a lot of underreporting when it comes to intimate partner violence. And given the additional barriers young people face, then yeah, we know that there should be some additional underreporting.
Now we mentioned, you know, how the schools can get involved. What you do is you are prevention and outreach,
Right.
and so you're going into these schools,
Yes,
and
yes.
into these communities, being able to talk about what are some of the things that you talk about.
So we talk about, there's different ways in which we present the information. We can talk about dating violence, what does it look like, as we talked about, what are the different forms that it presents, different forms of abuse, some stats, yes, warning signs, and then where do you go for help, what are the resources out there. We also talk about healthy relationships. We have a healthy relationship curriculum in which we go over tools that contribute to building a healthy relationship.
Let's talk about that.
Sure.
What are some healthy relationship tips
So-
that we need to be, and this is all of us, and you know, this will also probably help parents when they are witnessing their children in the presence of someone else. What does that healthy behavior look like?
And so in our curriculum, we focus on 5 tools to a healthy relationship. Respect being one. Actually, number 1 is communication.
Absolutely, communication is key. Yeah,
Communication
exactly.
is very
I've learned that
important.
hard way.
Yeah, communication is the most important one, I will say, because you need to have healthy communication with the person that you're in a relationship with. And that's not neither passive or aggressive. And so, and you show in a healthy relationship, you can see how healthy it's going to be by the way you communicate. How do you resolve conflicts? So the way that resolve conflict in a violent way, whether it's screaming or breaking things or simply talking things out, coming to a compromise.
That's a healthy relationship.
Exactly, that's a healthy relationship. You know, if it's not just one person always paying for the movie tickets and the snacks, you know, but maybe, and picking the movie, you know, but maybe you you share the responsibilities and the benefits of being in a relationship. You take turns in picking the movie, or you take turns in paying for the tickets, and you know, you cover the tickets, I pay for the snacks. That kind of compromise and shared responsibility. Then comes respect, of course, and we talk about different scenarios in which teens can see or hear about what does respect look like. Getting respect and giving respect back. So that is respecting your other friendships, respecting your time away from each other. For example, respecting the fact that you have a test tomorrow that you have to study, and you can't be on the phone all night long, right? Because this test is going to be really important for you to whether to pass the class. So that kind of is a way to show respect to your partner.
Yeah.
You know, that they have other things that are important things that they need to do. Then we also talk about boundaries. And all of this come together too, right? You need to be able to communicate your boundaries and say, you know what, I don't like it when you say those things, or you call me those names, or you do those things. I don't like it when you do X, Y, and Z, please don't do this again. And if the other person doesn't respond in a positive way, like, oh, you know, that's right, but I'm sorry, my bad, but instead they turn it back around and say, that's because you provoked me, because you brought it onto yourself. You're also always going on in your own way. So this was just kind of like a revenge act, right? So that's a way that you can tell this is, you know, that's not a healthy dynamic. The more healthy dynamic, again, is that if you have a boundary, you express it, and that you expect the other person to respect those boundaries, right? We also talk about self-esteem and support.
That's a big one.
Yes, when you're in a healthy relationship, your partner should not be putting you down or not supporting you in your goals.
You should feel good about yourself.
Exactly. So
Your partner should feel good about you and be proud of you.
And be
say
proud to say,
positive,
this is my man,
right.
or this is
Exactly.
my woman.
Exactly, and it's building you up instead of putting you down.
Exactly.
And the last one is equality. Again, I talked a little bit about that, you know, sharing responsibilities, being able to come together in a compromise, and not having this unequal sort of power, one person over the other, power dynamic. Yeah.
Now, we talked about parents and making sure that they are watching their kids. What are some of the signs that they need to be watching for?
Oh, you mentioned some of them earlier, right? If they're wearing long sleeves in the
Yes.
summer, there's changes in their appearances, in their demeanor, the weight control.
And they're wearing
yeah.
long sleeves because there may be bruises
Right.
that are on their arms. Now, I always say if it's a bruise and it looks like fingers, but your kid said that they got it falling down,
That
that
doesn't make
story
sense.
does not make sense.
Yeah,
You need to investigate that further.
Someone who, again, so if they're choosing to like stay at home instead of going out with their friends, they're not doing their usual extracurricular activities. They have lost interest in hanging out with other friends. They're only, because, and then you get this perception again that their boyfriend doesn't really like their other friends, right?
If they're getting text messages, 50 times a day from their boyfriend, and you see every time that one comes
They
in,
flinch.
right, and she's, nervously responding.
They can't,
Because she knows that if she doesn't respond in a certain time,
Exactly.
right, it's gonna
then
be
the
a problem.
abuser may
Then she
have an
may-
issue with that.
She may be punished for that.
What about whether or not the abuser is abusing animals and other people?
We have seen that someone who's abusive to one person is abusive towards others. So yeah, someone who has explosive anger could be an abuser. Someone who, yes, like I mentioned, if they're abusing animals, that's a clear sign that they could be abusing other people. And if they're, one common factor between abusers is narcissism. So if and that's just in intimate partner violence, we know that that tends to be the most common factor rather than any other kind of profile of age, gender, race. It's this narcissistic nature. But yeah, if they have an explosive anger, can also be a sign.
And also dressing differently. So you have a kid that is maybe wearing baggy clothes or clothing that is probably inappropriate for the different seasons, or provocative clothing even, because maybe the abuser wants to see them looking a certain kind of way.
Yeah, so it's for both, right? So if they change altogether the way that they're dressing because they started dating someone, then yeah, it could be because it could be their abuser is controlling the way that they dress, whether it's I don't want you to show any skin or I want you to show more skin for me. Yeah.
And I think, with parents, you just once again have to keep your eyes and ears open, and eyes open because your kid may not be saying anything to you, but their mannerisms is telling you something different. And if your gut is telling you something's wrong, don't ignore your gut. Your gut is always right. And that may mean that you as the parent needs to step in. Now, be it that if you feel comfortable in talking to that other set of parents, or be it that you want to go immediately to the police with this. But stress that you are on your kid's side.
I think it's really important to talk to your teen and continue talking to your teen. And intervention can be a really difficult thing because as a parent we may feel like this is how we need to intervene and we're going to do that, but sometimes intervention can actually make it more dangerous for the person that's being the victim. So if we go to, it's a girl being abused, and we go to the boyfriend's parents and we talk to the parents, and then the parents yell at their son, well, what are you doing, and why are you acting the fool? Well, then she may get beat up terribly for that, because how dare you that you
Talk to
told.
my parents.
So if at all possible, it's really talking to that person that's experiencing it, and hopefully them getting to the place where they're able to talk about it, and then together you can come up with what is a safety plan that's really going to work for that person. And what I would say, if you're a parent and you're worried, don't ask one time. They may yell at you, "Mom, you're so stupid, get out of my face."
continue.
go back a couple of days later when things are calm, sweetheart, I love you. I want you to be okay. What's going on? And keep asking.
Yeah.
Yeah, ask it in completely different ways, and
Right.
sometimes you may trip
Right.
them up so that they talk to you.
Right.
You know,
And maybe they won't talk to you, but maybe they have an aunt or maybe they have an adult sibling that they will talk to. So go to that person and say, hey, I'm worried. Talk to my sweetheart for me.
exactly. So let's talk about safety plans
Okay.
for a second, because we've got a few more minutes, but I definitely want to talk about some safety plans. So what are some of the things that you have to consider before you leave, during your leave, and after you leave?
So again, talking about young people, I think we have to consider school. School is the place where they spend the most time. So what kind of, if there's any protocol that the school has when it comes to addressing dating violence, because it may be, without the intervention of the school, it may be harder for that student to change their classroom schedule, to change anything that's the routine for them, right? So reach out to the school and see what are the options there. What is if there's a protocol that they have, then that's better. And if there's some kind of policy about it. But if there's a protection order, definitely keep a copy of that in everywhere. We often talk about, get different 4 or 5 different copies certified from the protection order, and keep one at the school, one at your job, one in your car, if you drive.
One with a friend, or
with
someone
a
that
friend,
you trust,
yeah.
something. And then also like your IDs. So as adults, we probably have a driver's license. As a kid, you may not have a driver's license, but you may have like a state ID card or something that you need. So you need to be able to identify yourself. And you may need other types of papers like your school records and things like that.
Yeah.
But you have to consider your safety.
Right. Breaking up with an abusive partner is the most dangerous time.
Yes.
You're at 75% greater risk of being hurt or killed. The abuser may be saying things like, I'll hurt myself if you leave me, try to get them to meet them somewhere. And it's a very dangerous time, so there needs to be a safety plan. And whether that is having a walking buddy or someone to walk with them home, or having a safe way to get to and from school or to and from work. But it's what we call the support network. We have to involve other support networks.
Absolutely. How about changing the locks if they have,
Changing
a
your
key
passwords,
to the house or a key to your car, or even if they have a key to the lockers, like the padlocks on the lockers, change all of that. Change your phone numbers, things like that, so that you no longer, once you leave, have that kind of contact. And also you're not tempted to go back to that abuser. Now, what are some resources? You all are a great resource, so please tell everyone how they can reach you.
We have a 24-hour crisis line, 404-873-1766. 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, you will get a live person answering it. We have lots of great information on our website, which is just padv.org. So feel free to go to the website to get information. There's a National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, ncadv.org. You can go to that website to find information about programs in your area. If you, pretty much wherever you live, if you Google domestic violence programs, say you're in Kansas City, DV programs in Kansas City, a listing of local programs are going to come up for you.
Absolutely. Do you have any texting options that they can do?
We don't currently have texting options.
Yeah, in Georgia there is a text line for teens, but the one of these websites that you mentioned, the Love Is Not Abuse.
Yes, loveisrespect.org is a good website to go to, and there's actually a national dating abuse helpline that provides also 24-hour services. That number is toll free, 866-331-9474, and for that they actually have a text as well. Text Love Is to 22522. Once again, that is Love Is, all together, as Samantha said, 2252. What is your information? One more time.
404-873-1766, padv.org.
Absolutely.
We're on Facebook and Instagram as well as PADV Atlanta.
Absolutely.
And Twitter.
So, thank you so much for you all coming to the show and getting the
Thank you,
word
Dr.
out
Prince.
about this. Absolutely. I can't stress the importance of, paying attention to unhealthy signs in relationships, be it with a potential abuser, be it with family, friends, or strangers. When you see something that does not look quite right, do not turn a blind eye to that. Speak up. Stand up. If you are being abused, you need to be able to receive help, but we can only help you if we know about it. So once again, speak up. If you are the abuser and you know that it's wrong, you too can get help by calling one of these numbers. You are not going to be ostracized or chastised. We applaud you if you understand that you are an abuser and you need to
some
come
help.
forth and you
Absolutely.
need some help. We're going to get it for you, okay? I want you to take precautions to protect your well-being. Make sure that you're in a safe environment and document
Absolutely.
everything about the abuse because your life depends on it. In order to be able to prove that you're abused, we got to have some kind of, once again, we got to know, we got to have some kind of documentation. And it's unfortunate, but it is what it is in the legal realm. So please document, please be safe. And until the next time, many blessings to you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Health Tips with the Nation's Bedside Doctor on Clark TV Network, where we look forward and believe in the future. Thank you.